Hello everyone, Fanta here, you're watching Fantavision, and today we are discussing more news that pertains to this certain crisis that I cannot name. That's right, more scumbags are coming out of the woodwork, and we're really seeing how people actually are. We're getting to the root of how people are going to respond in any crisis situation. How are these companies going to handle what's going on? We've seen how GameStop has handled it. They didn't want to close at first. They finally conceded, and now there are rumors of them opening their store. We have Hobby Lobby, who stayed open because God told them to, and now apparently God changed his mind and they're closing. Amazon is the new company under the spotlight. And why? Why are they under the spotlight? Not just because a lot of warehouses are getting infected, but it's how they're handling these different infections at these warehouses and how they're handling workers reacting to this. Now, this is a story about a Amazon warehouse on Staten Island that has fired one of its managers because he was starting to actually stick up for his employees because he noticed that people were getting sick and they were not handling it the way that other Amazon warehouses were. They were not sticking to the codes, and all the higher ups above him were not listening. And he seemed to be the only person that was sending people home when they started showing symptoms. So let's start from the beginning. How did this all start? It all started when all of the executives went out to all the different meetings. They had one of those big old sales meetings with all the executives, and they all met in Seattle. That's right, Seattle. And this was during the time that it was starting to ramp up. The whole crisis was just beginning. It was definitely a thing at this point, but a lot of executives were coming back from Seattle and they were getting sick. And he said it was like a domino effect. He saw one person get sick, another person, it just started spreading. He started noticing that his fellow employees were starting to get sick and he was telling people to go home. Some of his coworkers were even being tested and they were still coming to work because they were told that they could not self-quarantine until HR got a paper saying that they were infected.
Pretty much told me because there's no confirmed cases that they're not going to do anything.
So this virus that can infect people 2 weeks before you show any symptoms, you're now required to have a piece of paper saying that you are in fact infected. So you can work for 2 weeks while infected, spreading this to everybody else just because HR needs a piece of paper. Instead of doing the safe thing and sending people home until they find out for sure, they're making these people come in sick. That's crazy. That's insane. And it's crazy and insane for so many reasons because it's such a short-sighted thing to do. You're not only, sure, you're going to be out of work for a bit. Sure, some people could be lying. But if they've been tested, it means they have serious symptoms. Because that's the only way you're going to get tests right now. Tests are not some abundant thing you can go pick up at Walgreens. I can't just go out and buy a test. I have to be showing symptoms already and go somewhere. This is ridiculous. If somebody is tested, they should be stuck at home until they are for sure not sick. But that's not what they're doing. And this started bothering him. He was sending people home and he got into a meeting with all the other managers and his higher-ups were telling him that yes, there was an employee that has been infected, but don't tell anybody.
First confirmed case of the coronavirus, an employee contracted on March 11th. I looked at the managers, the higher ups. I said, what are we doing? We closing the building down, right? We're closing the building down and sanitizing, right? Just like the building a week before in Queens, New York. They did that. They sent everybody home and sanitized the building. Everybody returned back to work, even though it was less than a day. I don't agree with that, but they did it at least. It gave some type of comfort. But they didn't even do that. They said, no, business as usual.
They wanted to keep it under wraps. They wanted to keep this quiet to not frighten people, which is like the number one reason, the number one excuse, I should say. It's not a reason. The number one excuse for keeping this a secret is to not freak people out. I'm sorry, but I'm pretty sure that everyone's safety is a lot more important than whether or not they're worried about getting infected. I feel like infecting them is much worse than people being worried about being infected. You know, doesn't that kind of make logical sense? During this time of mismanagement and everything else, he started staying home unpaid because he didn't want to catch it, and he was contacting all of the local authorities, which are obviously busy right now, so they didn't really get back to him. But he refused to keep quiet about this, and because of that, they quarantined him and him alone. He was the only person that they quarantined at that warehouse, despite the fact that an employee was infected. Also, they did not shut down that warehouse once somebody was confirmed infected to sanitize the whole thing. And even then, when they're supposed to be having people clean up the warehouse overnight, which they were having, it was like a 25-man crew, and some of those people were not showing up to work. So this giant Amazon warehouse had 25 or less people that had to clean it overnight. So you have very few people cleaning a massive facility that is confirmed to have infected people in it. And after he was fired, he kept coming in anyway to tell people during the lunch break that there is people that are infected here. There are infected individuals in this warehouse, and they are not telling you. And I'm sure this made a lot of people want to stay home. I'm sure he prevented a lot of people from being infected, and that's why he led this strike. He wanted them to know that he wasn't just going to stand there and let people silently get infected because management didn't want to do anything about it. Now, it doesn't end there. No. That's already a video in itself, because that's already messed up. After he was fired, notes from a meeting with many of the top higher-ups in Amazon, including Jeff Bezos himself, leaked. And it was found that they were trying to form a smear campaign on Christian. And they were going to try to make him the face of unions. What does this mean? This means they're trying to downplay the need for unions and use this guy as some sort of example of what a person is that wants to join a union. He wants to make people that want to join unions look stupid, despite the fact that a union is supposed to protect workers and make sure that they are fairly treated. Of course, unions in the past have had issues, but the main point of a union is exactly that. Of course, all the major corporations are against unions for obvious reasons. Walmart was definitely against them. It was like a religion about how evil unions were. Amazon is the same way. If you breathe about a union in any of these big companies, your ass is gone. Let me read this quote from the executives meeting, because it really highlights just how little they think of their employees. It highlights just how much they look down upon them and what they were really trying to do. This is from the leaked internal meeting notes, and this is Amazon General Counsel David Zapolsky discussing how to deal with Christian Smalls. Quote, "He's not smart or articulate, and to the extent the press wants to focus on us versus him, we will be in a much stronger PR position than simply explaining for the umpteenth time how we're trying to protect the workers." Remember, Jeff Bezos is in this meeting. "We should spend the first part of our response strongly laying out the case for why the organizers' conduct was immoral, unacceptable, and arguably illegal, in detail, and only then follow with our usual talking points about worker safety. Make him the most interesting part of the story, and if possible, make him the face of the entire union/organizing movement." So again, they're not really worried about people's health and safety. And you can tell because in the middle of this, they're already spinning it to their advantage to dissuade people from joining unions. And if your pay and benefits and everything is fair, would you really have to worry about people joining a union? Or is it the way that you have been treating these workers for this whole time, the way you've been paying them, the way you've been giving them their benefits, the fact that the turnover rate is so high in these warehouses, the fact that there have been people dying in these warehouses, maybe that's why people want to unionize, and that's why you're so against it, and why you want to spin this whole story as an anti-union story. Now, of course, once this leaked, they they had to come out with a little statement of their own. Now, Zapolsky is the one giving the statement once again. Quote, comments were personal and emotional, and that he was frustrated and upset that an Amazon employee would endanger the health and safety of other Amazonians by repeatedly returning to the premises after having been warned to quarantine himself after exposure. Remember, he was like the only person that was quarantined. And the reason they quarantined him was to have an excuse to fire him. Lots of employees in that warehouse were exposed to these workers that were infected. Lots of people were exposed to these executives that were infected. But only he was quarantined because they needed a reason to fire him. So there you go. Of course, a giant corporation is acting like this. But I am surprised that even Jeff Bezos himself was participating in this meeting. It's funny that after all of this, they're finally starting to give N95 masks to Whole Food workers. They're finally starting to take their employees' temperatures and to monitor their health. It took this man protesting and drumming up all of this attention for them to start doing something. And that just seems to be the case with so many of these big corporations. They feel like they can get away with anything until somebody speaks up and the media swarms them. So as much as a lot of people hate the media, and I completely get it, it's very frustrating to me a lot. Big media pisses me off on the regular. But if it wasn't for them exposing this sort of thing, taking these employees that normally would just be silenced, wiped off the face of the earth, and just whatever, just one person said something, because the media picked up on this, because people are talking about this, they have to do something. Something that is good, along with now people finally getting masks and people getting their temperature taken. The New York mayor and the attorney general are seeking an investigation into this firing, which means that Amazon will have to think twice before pulling this sort of thing in the future. And any company that was thinking of doing something like this is now going to have to reconsider, because everybody's under the microscope. And I feel like companies always should have been, but I don't know. It's a happy ending. Well, so far. I hope the guy's okay. In many of his interviews, he's definitely distraught because he needed the money. He was working paycheck to paycheck. But you know what? He felt that this was important enough to stand up for. And I hope he is somehow going to financially make it through these times. So thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below about this whole situation. Like the video if you guys liked it. Subscribe for more content. And as always, have a fantastic day. See you guys. I don't know that this situation, I hope the New York mayor and attorney can do something, do some real damage, make Amazon remember what they've done, and have other companies kind of see what happened to Amazon and go, oh, maybe we should clean up our act. I mean, this is a life and death scenario. Even he was saying that, and it really is. I know there's a lot of people that aren't taking this seriously. That's stupid. It doesn't make any sense. A conspiracy cannot be an entire world thing. You know, there's going to be somebody that's going to leak something. Just this internal meeting was leaked. Like that was just a couple of people, and it was still leaked.